This is about the death of Jesus. So if Jesus didn't exist, then he couldn't have died. So we want to look at this next fact. Now, I know with many conversations, some with my Muslim friends, they will deny that Jesus actually died. So the question we want to explore here, the fact we want to explore here is what evidence, what are the facts about Jesus' death? Did he die or did he just faint? And then kind of someone hit him and he came back onto the scene 3 days later. What are the facts about the death of Jesus?
Yeah, and I mean, you've already said pretty much the only reason why. I mean, for most people, this follows quite logically. If Jesus existed, then at some point, you would have died. So, I mean, yeah, it's quite straightforward, But the only reason why you would deny that is because you have some other agenda or some other reason, something else you believe about him. And so there is in the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, in case anyone's interested, Surah 4, verse 157. But Jesus the Christ did not die, nor did they crucify him, but so it was made appear to them. So there is Muhammad writing the Quran under what he believes is divine inspiration, and he's making that claim that Jesus was never crucified. And how he resolves that, so you have different Muslim sort of groups that resolve the thing differently. Some say, he was miraculously exchanged in the moment of the crucifixion. Others say, he might have had a half-brother, or the swoon theory says he survived the crucifixion and then dashed off, some say, towards India. Now, I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful. You can believe those things, but you must know that 600 years after the events happened, without any access to any primary source, without any access to any sources that document the real events, if you make that kind of claim, it's a metaphysical claim. You're asking people to believe something because you feel that God has revealed it to you. And if you choose to do that, that's okay. But again, you must know that you're not doing that because of reasoning, not because of research. You're doing that because you're asked to believe something. And then the question is, of course, for us, that's what you asked, did Jesus really die? And the question is, in particular, did he really die on the cross? And here, again, the evidence is extremely strong. There is literally or virtually no scholar who denies that, because it is such an outlandish story that nobody would have made up. If you create a Messiah who you feel, saves you and who overcomes, the devil, you wouldn't let him die on the Roman cross, especially not if your Jewish scriptures say everyone is cursed who hangs on a cross. Now that's just, it's not, I don't know if anyone has seen the movie Risen yet. Has anyone seen it? Yeah, I only saw the trailer. I wanted to watch it, but it's only on the graveyard shift, so it was really late. So anyway, there was this one moment where, in the trailer, where one of the Jews, probably from the Sanhedrin, said, if we have an empty grave, we have a Messiah. And it's sort of projecting this idea that everyone was expecting that when the Messiah comes, he would die and rise again. And that's just not the case. Nobody expected that at all. It was completely, it hit them completely unprepared. They were completely unprepared for something radical and strange like this to happen. And so there's no motivation to make that kind of story up. There is probably even a lack of imagination that you would have to say towards some fisherman that would make up a story like this. So it's really hard to believe that this is just fiction. And the other thing is, and I read an interesting an article on this. It's by Edwards and Gabler in 1986. It's called "On the Physical Death of Our Lord Jesus," and it was published in the Journal of American Medical Association. Now I'm waiting for you to prove me wrong, Anne-Marie. But what they said is there is very, very strong evidence in the gospel where John tells us that when Jesus was crucified, they pierced him with a spear. And when they pierced him with a spear, there was blood and water coming out. Now, what they didn't know is what we know today, that if you pierce somebody, say from the left to the right side, you would expect some blood to come out from the ventricle vein, and you would expect some serum to come out from the lungs if you pierce the lungs. And that separation of the blood clot and the serum would be absolute indication that that person is dead. That's what they claimed. Anyway, I'm not the expert on this, but this seems to be very, very strong evidence, again, because this is something that the gospel writers wouldn't have known. This is something they just recorded what they saw, and now today we know this is very strong evidence towards that the fact that Jesus actually was dead. And besides, I mean, who believes that he would have survived the crucifixion? I mean, if you read anything about a Roman crucifixion, they knew how to kill people, okay? They started flogging, and we know that Jesus was flogged and that he was, secondly, very heavily flogged. So because Pilate tried to get him off the cross, so he flogged him heavily and then made him look especially pathetic towards the people and say, see what I've done to him, now will you let him go? So what they did, they had something called a flagrum, and that's basically a whip, and the whip has a lot of leather lashes, and on these lashes you have metal balls with spikes. And then they would just whip the person, and those spikes would hook into your skin, and they would pull the skin of your back, and they would sometimes, if they hit on your face, they would rip off the face. And sorry for the graphic images, but I'm just trying to really bring my point across here. If they would hit you here in the front, they would sometimes tear out the entire flesh, and the organs would fall out, and so it's really, really not something that anyone would have survived. And then, of course, they make you carry the part of the cross, again, to humiliate you, to completely break and humiliate you. And then as Jesus was walking out to Golgotha, and then they were hanging him on the cross, they were piercing him with nails in his hands and in his feet. And that's important, because when you hang on the cross, you need the feet to sort of lift yourself up to breathe. Because of the way you hung, if you don't have the feet to lift yourself up, you can't breathe anymore. And so when what they then often did is they watched the spectacle for a day or 2 or 3 or however long they enjoyed it, and then they broke the legs of the people on the cross. They did that so that they couldn't lift themselves up anymore, and then they would die of suffocation. And this is, again, there isn't anyone in the history of the Roman Empire who has survived a full crucifixion. And there is really nothing at all, no single shred of evidence suggesting that Jesus would have survived that.
Okay, well, let's look at 2 quotes by some historians. Luke Johnson says, even the most critical historian can confidently assert that a Jew named Jesus worked as a teacher and a wonder worker in Palestine during the reign of Tiberius. He was executed by crucifixion under the prefect Pontius Pilate and continued to have followers after his death. Another lady, Paula Fredrickson, says, the crucifixion is the strongest single fact we have about Jesus.